You had a question before.
Yeah, thanks. So have you been briefed on the situation at Redgranite? Are you concerned about how that interfered with a couple of DCI investigations?
I am aware of what's going on. DOJ is following that situation closely. I'm not going to speak about the details of ongoing matters, but what I will say is that keeping safe people who are working with law enforcement to make cases is critically important. I saw that Secretary Carr said that he was going to be reviewing the matter, which I certainly think is appropriate, and will continue to monitor things closely as they move forward.
Waushara County DA says he's investigating potential obstruction of justice. Could be something he looks into. Are you assisting with that in any way?
Like I said, I'm not going to comment on the ongoing matters in that case, but we are closely following what's going on.
In terms of testing at the crime lab, do you know if there's a backlog on toxicology tests or how long it might take to turn those?
It varies by type of test. Toxicology numbers have improved recently. Some areas where we've seen some concerns are DNA testing. There has been an increase in testing times, average turnaround times for DNA, including an increase in the number of tests that have taken more than 60 days to turn around. We also have delays for firearms and tool mark testing that I think need to be reduced. So those are making sure that we reduce those delays is going to be an important area of focus for us.
What steps are you going to take to try to address that?
We'll be taking several different steps. I touched on one of them earlier, which is making sure that we have enough staff at the crime lab so that the evidence can be tested efficiently. We actually haven't seen much of an increase in DNA submissions over the last several years, but there has been a fairly consistent increase in turnaround times, and that's a good sign, I think, that we need more staff to address that issue.
Go ahead.
All right. U.S. Attorneys Blatter and Kruger today sent letters to about 180 physicians to review their opioid practices and how they are prescribing these opioids. Your thoughts on that, and are you in support of what they're doing?
I am in support of what they're doing. We have an opioid epidemic that has been devastating for people across the state, and we need to take whatever steps we can to make sure that we're fighting that epidemic. What I'm hoping that this will do is, with some of these prescribers that are prescribing really high dosages or large counts of pills, it's going to send a message, hopefully, that the federal government, federal investigators are paying attention to what's going on, and hopefully encourage these prescribers to engage in safer practices. That's one of the things we need to be doing to work on reducing the opioid addiction crisis that we have going on right now.
Do you have any plans now that you're in office to address the opioid crisis, any legislation, or have you been talking about it with lawmakers?
I think there are several things we should be doing. One is I want to make sure that law enforcement at the Department of Justice is working hand in hand with federal law enforcement, with local law enforcement, so we can identify trafficking networks and work to dismantle drug trafficking conspiracies. But we also need to keep expanding access to substance abuse treatment, keep focusing on diversion programs. One of the things I intend to request in this budget is continued funding for diversion grant programs. But we've also, one of the steps that I think we should be taking here in Wisconsin is expanding Medicaid. If we do that, we're going to cover tens of thousands of additional Wisconsinites. That means more people would have the coverage they need to pay for treatment, and we'd save the state about $190 million a year, money that could be put into addressing a number of problems, but including the opioid epidemic.
Will you consider filing or joining a lawsuit against pharmaceutical companies that had some role in the opioid epidemic?
So Wisconsin, under my predecessor, it was announced that Wisconsin is part of a multi-state investigation, and one of the things that we're doing is reviewing the status of that investigation and figuring out what the next steps are for Wisconsin. But to the extent that the evidence is there and we think that a lawsuit is a better means of proceeding than a multi-state investigation, I think that's an option we'll take a hard look at. To the extent that we think that the multi-state investigation is being productive and that's the best way to go, we'll continue with that route.
Do you see yourself defending the state in a union lawsuit that was filed yesterday on the lame duck?
So I won't comment on that. We've communicated on it, but I can say that, as you know, in another case in which the extraordinary session was challenged, we made clear that the Wisconsin Department of Justice has a substantial interest in that case because the authority of the Department of Justice was impacted. We view that as a conflict with defending the law, so we took the position that we wouldn't be defending the law in that case.
So wouldn't it be the same in this case? I mean, what's materially different about that conflict issue?
I'm not going to comment on that publicly until the potential defendants in that case have had a chance to comment on it. I think they should comment on it first.
Have you gotten word from the JFC on whether or not they're going to take up your request to remove the state from the ACL lawsuit?
I know what's been said publicly, which is the statements to the press. We'll see how things progress from there.
Do you have a plan B if they don't consider it?
Right now, the request has been made. I think it's appropriate to allow time to pass for that to be addressed, and letting that process unfold is the sort of first step. That's where we're focused right now.
Do you have any updates on the wedding barn issue following Will's suit?
So that's a case that we are reviewing as well. That suit sort of stemmed from a position that was taken by Attorney General Schimmel. But one of the things we'll have to do in a case of that sort, because it involves DOR enforcement, is consult with DOR and determine in consultation with them what approach to take in that case.
Have you had those conversations yet?
We have not made a determination as to what we'll be doing in that case yet.
This is the last one, guys.
Planned Parenthood sued recently. Are you going to defend the state in that case?
So with any case where the state is sued, aside from the conflict situation we were discussing before, the inquiry for the Attorney General is whether there is a reasonably defensible legal basis for the suit. That's a case that we are in the process of reviewing, and we'll take a position consistent with that basic standard. And Caitlin, you had a question before today. I didn't want to miss you.
Yeah, that's okay. It was just related to the crime lab again. I was wondering if you were gonna, one thing that was brought up in a consultant's report in the summer was about how there's a lot of turnover because people are not paid well.
Yes.
And I was wondering if you were specifically gonna address the salary issue from folks not just hiring more, but folks leaving and coming in and that delaying times.
Yeah, the needs assessment, I think, was an important first step, and we want to build on a lot of the steps that were taken before to address some of the issues at the crime labs. Like I said earlier, there's outstanding staff at the crime labs who are doing cutting-edge work. We need to make sure that they have the resources they need, and that they're being paid appropriately for the quality of work they're doing. So one of the things we want to try to do is address the pay issue, hopefully with a pay progression program.
All right,
Cool.
thanks, guys.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.